Hello and welcome to the Dare to Differentiate podcast. This is Hani, your host, and really excited for our special guest today, colorist, lover of life. Nechama Yaffe is here in the house, and we have a lot of things to talk about. Among many talents that she has, why don't you tell us what you do?
Sure.
Let's get right to it.
First of all, I'm so excited to be here and talk to you.
Yay!
A beautiful summer girl here. So I meet with people and I create a palette for them with fabrics. And a lot of you might know about this system. It's based on seasons of the year, on nature, on art, and many different factors come into play. And every person has a unique and unusual color palette. And they also have a unique style that goes with it. And it just speaks to the individuality of each person. One of the things that I really love about doing palettes, it's kind of a reflection of who you are as a person. And even on how you use your colors is going to be different for each person. So not only is your specific palette unique to you, also any way that you use it, how you wear it, how you decorate, any way you use it is going to be really individual to you as a person.
And I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because the name of the podcast is Dare to Differentiate, which means like dare to be yourself and differentiate yourself from other people.
Right.
From my experience, having hired you to work with me and show me, you know, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, where I can be more me, was so valuable. Yeah. So I really wanted to bring this conversation and give other people an opportunity, obviously to know that you have these services and also just to share your wisdom with our audience here, because this was something that I was going to talk about later, but let's just jump right into it.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Because there's a few other questions that whatever, but this idea that there are always trends that come and go, especially in fashion. And then with women, there's like different types of, you know, work that people like to do. Sometimes it's, you know, Botox in certain areas or filler. Like sometimes when there's the season of the big lips or the little lips or the brows or like, you know, people who tweeze their eyebrows out have no eyebrows left now. And they're just like regretting it. Right. So there are all these like trends that come and go. And one of the big trends now is people getting their colors done.
Right.
But it's kind of ironic because getting your colors done is so that you're less trendy, you're more you.
Right. And you can also use the trends that are current and just integrate them into your palette and into your style. So you can still take a huge, you know, hint from whatever is in style and use your palette. And the palette for a person works the same way that a palette works for a painter. The most cohesive and beautiful paintings are ones where the colors have harmony and contrast and they somehow all fit together. And I like to compare a really good palette to like a story. Like to me, the best stories are the ones that have kind of the surprise ending. And I think most palettes, you know, when done with a lot of thought, will have something that kind of is unusual and someone might say, wow, that's really unusual and that really looks beautiful, even though it's an unexpected twist.
Yes.
So, and I feel like when I did your palette, the same, you know, I think I had some impressions about you when I started, but I was surprised about the contrast of the colors that were in your palette. And I'm looking at it now and just like the level of the golds and like kind of the strength of the palette was really interesting to me. I mean, did you feel the same way? Like with your palette? Okay.
I was very just like, some of it was, yes, expected. And a lot of it was very unexpected.
Right.
And ever since I had it done, like just the process of integrating that like unexpectedness has been really interesting too.
Right. And I think also what sometimes makes like an outfit or a look really beautiful or a home is when you have your color scheme and then you have the unexpected elements in it as well, like as highlights or as like a pop of color. So I think that's one of the nice things about having your own personal palette is that it's something you could just carry with you and you don't have to worry too much when making choices.
Yeah. Well, I think there's like this because for some people, they want to get their colors done because they don't want to think at all. They just be like, what do I wear? What styles? What this, what that? And without really putting anything else into it, which is kind of what I was saying before about people following the rules or following the trends or following exactly how it has to be just so. And what I love about the way that you do it is that the possibilities open up.
Right.
They don't like get more narrow.
Right.
You know, because like, oh, I can't wear that. It's not on my palette. And it's like, oh, maybe like, what if I can wear it? Like, what if I can make it?
Yes.
Like, what about it do I like? What about it can work? What about it can I integrate?
It's absolutely true. And I think that like at certain times of the year, you'll find you're able to wear colors that are brighter or softer than your palette. And that's fine. Like in the winter, you might wear softer colors. In the summer, you might wear a brighter yellow or a brighter orange, you know, like along those lines that are more like tropical colors. And sometimes if everything else is within your palette, and I use that term really loosely because I also mean it means style, then you can carry off a color that's not necessarily exactly on your palette.
Right.
But it has something, there's something about the fabric of the dress or the fabric or the style that does fit you. Then you can carry it off.
Yeah. And I love how like you're not so conservative about it, which is, I think, so important. I think a lot of people need to hear it. And I mean, just who am I to say what people need to hear? But whatever, here we are. Like when you have conversations with people who have had their colors done and they're just like so rigid about it.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think that's the point.
Right. When I actually make the palette, I try to be very careful about the colors that I put on it.
Yes.
Because it has to look like a picture or a painting as a whole. And I really think about what fabrics I put on. But if there's a color that's close to it, of course, and someone finds it, then go ahead. Yeah. Obviously, especially if it's in the right fabric, the right cut, the right everything, then I don't think there's a reason not to. I think it's hard enough to find clothing sometimes that are exactly the right color and the right style. I think sometimes something has to give.
Yes.
And like if you don't always wear black or dark blue, but you find something really classical that's really fitting for you, then people, you know, can go ahead and do that.
Yeah. You're not surrendering to the fact that you'll make it work. It's like, no, this is part of the plan. Where like you're not exactly going to. I'm just speaking to myself when I say this. It's like, oh well, this can work even if it's black, and it's like, I'm not surrendering to it. It's just this is what's good for me. This is what.
And there's there's always ways to counteract. Let's say you're wearing a color that's slightly off of your palette. You could pair it with like a lipstick or with a belt or something that is on your palette, and it will bring things back to the original palette and to like the whole cohesiveness of the look. So like, let's say you're wearing something that's a little too yellow, for example. So you could bring it back by wearing a lipstick that's more pink. So it balances the yellow. So you're bringing it back closer to what your palette is.
Yeah. That's actually what was so unexpected with my palette. The yellow. I was like, what's this doing here?
It's the gold.
It's the gold and the yellow?
Yeah. Well, it's the gold. Yeah. The gold, it's mostly from your hair.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you got into it before we continue?
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's talk about how you get into it. And then like, let's unpack it and explain more. Cause I feel like we just dove right in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd love to. So I was trying to think about the earliest time that I was kind of interested in this. And if I go back to really early childhood, I always loved nature. I grew up in Maine. Our parents took us to the lake. And shout out to all the Yaffes. If I'm remembering any of this wrong, you can call me later.
Email us with feedback.
Right, exactly. But I remember going to the lake every summer, learning how to swim in the lake. And we were so close to nature. And my dad used to take us to the farm to get milk. And I remember like, you know, after going to the farm, sitting in the back of the station wagon, you know, with the glass bottles of milk from the farm. And I had all these experiences early on where I was really kind of immersed in nature, just being outside a lot. And I think that's where my early love came of this idea of palettes. As I got older, I became more interested in painting and drawing. And a lot of it was painting and drawing things from nature. And this is a huge shout out to Mrs. Rhodes, our high school teacher in 11th grade. She taught us botany and physics. And one of the things that she did, which was amazing, is that she got us all to get sketchbooks. Wow. And she actually took us out on these trips, which was really beautiful. We went to the beach with her once, and she gave us opportunities to kind of draw things from nature. And I think the older I got, the more it solidified this connection between nature, the seasons, and art. And when I got a little bit older, I started to be interested in fashion and how you could create an entire story with a look. And that's kind of how I came to it. It was kind of started with nature, then with drawing, and then with fashion. So I didn't come to it by fashion first. I came to it really with my love of nature. And one of the exciting things about creating palettes is that you have all these things that I'm kind of passionate about, and have them all they all kind of come together and let me express it. Yeah. And maybe help other people see themselves. One of the things that I wanted to say before I forget is the reason the palettes resonate so much for me is because I think it helps us find where our place is in the world. And even though we look at it as something external, maybe it's a reflection of our soul, but the palette itself shows you that you fall within this grand, huge scheme of things, right? And God took the time to create you in such a specific way. And for me, it's a privilege to kind of help people see themselves where they fall in the whole scheme of nature. And I think once you kind of have that, it helps you say, oh, this is me. This is who I am. I'm not going to try to be somebody different. I'm going to be the best version of myself. And it sounds like it's an external thing, but actually palettes can be very grounding. Yeah. And once you have that, you can kind of say, oh, so this is who I am. And this is who I can be. These are the parameters of what I can explore, in my palette, in my life. And I know it's a very lofty kind of goal, but to me, when I had my palette done, it helped me understand myself a little bit better in some way, saying, oh, this is where I fall within nature. This is where I fall in the world.
Yeah, it's almost like you have on one side, you have this like opportunity of like what's possible. And then on the other side, you have this groundingness.
Yes.
And it's like all in one package.
Right.
And I really feel like with your work, you really do embody that, especially because of the way you came to it. Like it really shows in the way that you practice. And this is one of the things that I was looking for when I was looking to get it done. I was just like, I want it to be more well-rounded, and I want it to be aspirational.
Right.
And and you really like, it spoke to me.
Right.
So that's what's really cool. And I think a lot of people just want to keep it safe. And I have for many years, just trying to keep it safe, trying to just, go not fly too close to the sun, right?
Yes. That's a great metaphor. Yeah.
Girl boss too close to the sun. It's like a thing now. But then what are we here for? Like, we're not here to just keep our heads down and keep ourselves under the radar. And it takes like a certain bravery and a certain like choice to be like, no, who am I? What do I bring to the world? Right. And I think that's what's so amazing about the work that you do. And I want to highlight that.
Thank you.
And thank you.
But I wanted to say along those lines, when you have more limited choices, sometimes you're more creative. And I was recently speaking about a friend of mine who's going to be moving to a new house. And she was saying how she feels calmer and she feels like she's going to be able to make more choices when she doesn't feel like she's constantly moving from apartment to apartment, where and we were talking a lot about parameters, how they sometimes make us more successful, more focused because we've chosen a path and so you can be a really creative, artistic person and dress really well, but you'll find that if you don't have some sort of guidance, whether your own or from someone else, you can sometimes end up being all over the place. And sometimes it's like hit or miss. Sometimes you'll be really on target. Sometimes you won't be. And I think, like you said, it creates like a focus. Yeah. Or a focal point and a framework.
And almost like a safety to take risks. Because when you know where you can push the limit.
Right.
and like really like go out there and with whether it's a style or a color or a look, then the sky's the limit in that area. And then that just doesn't do it for me.
Right. It won't. Right. Like if someone gave you like black and white checks or something that, it would kind of, and that's one of the other pieces about the palette. So it's not that you're really limiting yourself, but we want to be framed in all the other parts of our life. And with the palette, you want to be framed to show the things that you're the best at. Right. So, or to be encouraged to do those things or supported. So in the same way, I mean, just as a metaphor, the palettes kind of take us along that same path where, you don't want to be swallowed up by the colors that are too bright or made too dull by colors that are too soft for you. In any palette, it's true. So that's why the balance is so important. And I honestly have been thinking a lot about this, and I think it more of as like a life metaphor in two ways: creating balance, creating beauty out of limited choices, because that's life anyway, where we are born into a certain era, a certain family, a certain place. And the palette just tells you, yes, you are in this, you fall within these guidelines, but you have all the creative ability and all this power and strength and ability to do whatever you want. That's like kind of just a metaphor for me. The other thing that I wanted to say personally, what I've learned so much about this, and I'm still working on this, and I think it's a lifelong work. I don't think it's something I'll ever know 100%, but I was thinking if I'm able to look at people and see the beauty in every person and see how unique they are, I was thinking, what if I could take that and also be like that with every person I meet? Like I should really be looking for what's good and beautiful and what's harmonious and what's wonderful, whatever season they are, wherever they fall within their season, in kind of this outside way. Then I should probably also be trying to do that when I meet people in person, to kind of find what's beautiful about them inside too. And I think if you go through life like that, you're less judgmental and less harsh, because you're looking at people you're looking from like the strength and not from the weaknesses.
Yeah. Why do you think that this has taken off?
The colors I think it's very powerful in the Jewish community because it has a spiritual overtone. And now is probably not like the right time to talk about it, but I've done research, and there are a lot of Kabbalists who talk about the influence of color and seasons. And there is a very spiritual aspect to color. And I think one of the reasons it's so powerful in the Jewish community is because we are trying to like be more in touch with our spirituality. And this is kind of maybe like, it feels like it might be an external way, but I do think it really connects with who you are as a person. And if we think about, we're just coming out of Sfiros HaOmer. If we're thinking about counting the Omer, like each of the Sfiros have a color, and the combinations of those create other colors. So you can think of the Sfira as kind of like an endless palette, and the Sfiros themselves as an endless palette. But that's like a whole other conversation to have. And I've actually written some things, and I've read a lot about it. And of course, that's also like a lifelong endeavor to talk about color and Judaism. But for right now, I think that's why, to me, I think it's taken off a lot. And maybe it's just our generation is trying to like reclaim some like connection to God, connection to spirituality. And that's
wow.
Yeah.
That is so powerful.
Oh, thanks.
This idea that, that there's something that when we connect with ourselves, we connect with who we are, we're really connecting with God. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about this idea that we were put here to be partners in creation with Hashem, specifically as parents, right? Like mother, father, Hashem is like the third, partner. But anytime you birth something, anytime you put something out into the world, anytime you create art or you even express yourself in a way, you dress in a certain way, that you're communicating something that is, you're being a partner with Hashem in that experience.
Right.
And I think that's so powerful, and we'll have to do a follow-up about that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We can go back to that at a different time, but I do think that's the reason it's kind of taken off, because I think that subconsciously or consciously people are trying to connect more. Right.
Do you want to talk about the process of like how you do people's palettes?
Of course. So Yeah. So and I just want to say that before I started doing palettes, I studied for a few years before I started. So I didn't feel ready until I had studied a lot and practiced a lot before I started doing it.
And it shows.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that I try to do when I meet someone is that I come with a notebook. I come with fabrics. I usually ask people to send me a few pictures of themselves before I come to meet them in person. And then I collect fabrics that are, I believe, to be within the spectrum, but some of them are, some of them aren't. And then I put it together afterwards. But first I bring a notebook and I kind of talk to whoever I meet with. And I think you posted such a cute picture of like surrounded by like fabric and my bag and my coat. But yeah, so I kind of want to hear who you are as a person. Cause for me, a palette is not just giving people a label of a season, because I don't always know that that's so helpful.
Season as in
a season, like just a season.
Fall, summer,
right? Just
spring.
a season. Exactly. Just a general season like fall, spring, summer, winter. I feel like sometimes you have to get the picture of the person as a whole before you assign them to a certain category within the season. So I think knowing somebody, getting to know someone as a person is a big part of it for me. And I think you can learn so much if you just kind of listen and observe. And then I move on to trying fabrics on and looking at what people have, if they've brought something to show me, if they come to me, or if I meet them at their home, to kind of look at what they have and what really fits and what really doesn't.
Yeah. So that's part one.
That's
just
part
like
one.
Assessing everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next part that I do is after I kind of gather the fabrics, I will go home. I will, kind of put everything together. I'll add fabrics that I haven't. I'll see if there's, other fabrics that I've missed, maybe lace or something or metallics, and put it all together. And yeah, I'm really following the guidelines. Of course, everyone has their own interpretation of Suzanne's work, but I'm really following Suzanne Cagill's work from years and years ago. She was the person who originated all of this. And there were many people who imitated her, but I try to be as faithful as I can to her work, because I love the way she integrated everything seamlessly into her palettes, the art, the eras, the nature, and the person. So I do my best, and it's definitely something in aspiration. And I think, like I said before, it's just, it's one of those things that it's a lifelong work, right?
Yeah.
When you can't really ever say that you know everything.
So do you want to just break it down for us, the art, the eras?
Yes, the eras, like different, and different. If we think about art, we think about even geography, like different countries and the costumes that come and the geography of the place. Like if you think about stone or pine trees, or different, if you think about Italy is a good example of a Mediterranean type climate, or, Scandinavian culture. So like what colors would you see there? What scenery would you see there? And most of us can fall within, a few different geographical places, and also within a few different costumes. But there's also art, and that's also a whole other conversation. But looking at palettes themselves and also the lines of the art, that can give you kind of an idea of what like artists did when they wanted to make something beautiful. What colors did they use together? Did they use high contrast? Did they use low contrast? Did you use a mostly neutral palette with some bright colors? And we can take hints from that and use that as well.
As like an inspiration.
As an inspiration for people.
Right. And why do you think it's important for people to have like art part of their palette?
Well, I think it's really by choice, because mostly right now I'm focusing on just doing the palettes and just giving a few pages of inspiration. I feel like some people can be overwhelmed by too much information, and I'm learning as well. So I think it's nice to have one or two paintings at least to look at and say, oh, that artist captured the era, the colors, the style, the costume that I would wear.
I mean, I love the fact that you incorporate art. Like, I think I'll just use the word again, aspirational. I really, really love it. And I think that it's almost like maybe we're a little afraid to like aspire too much and like be that bold.
Right. I think
but it's also
personality,
like,
right? Yeah. Like some people just want to know, okay, these are my colors. Just tell me what to get, right?
Like I'm going shopping tomorrow. Like what do I put in my cart?
Exactly. It's like flower prints, leopard prints, checks. Right. So I think it's also by what you want. And I mean, this is the goal. The goal of the palette, I think, and this is what I learned from Suzanne, is to be a good teacher, right? Mm-hmm. So what do we think of as a good teacher? A good teacher gives you the tools and enough information to go out and explore on your own. You know, too much information can also be overwhelming. And I'm learning by experience as well. So I want to be a good teacher to people. Yes. I'm doing my best, right? So like, if I can understand who you are, what you need, then I hope that I could adjust what information I share with you as a person, you, and I mean, anyone. The palette will remain the same because it's the colors, it's the fabrics, that would remain the same. But the other information that I share, I think it really depends on what each person needs.
Mm-hmm. How do you learn so quickly? First of all, about who this person is and get the picture and all the things that you mentioned. Okay. Number one. And then, because that's two different, like you have to learn. Yes. And then you need to like process it and be able to give it back in a way that they can take it in. So it's just like a lot in one go.
Right. It's a lot. Right. It's a lot of information and it's a lot to share with people too.
It's a lot to absorb too.
A lot to absorb.
For you to absorb or not necessarily.
No.
You just see it.
To me, it's not. To me, it's once everything makes sense to me, then other things will also make sense to me.
Okay. So it's like a puzzle.
I think the biggest thing for me is to keep an open mind. And I can say this, I mean, this is kind of good work advice, good life advice, I guess. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox here.
That's what we're here for.
Okay. So here I am on my soapbox. But I think the main thing is to keep an open mind. And one of the things that in general we need to be careful of is to create judgment based on just a little bit of information. The more information that you have, the better your judgment is going to be, right? It's like anything. It's like dating, evaluating a child, going for a job interview, any of those things. The more information you have, you're more in a place of certainty and better judgment. Yes. So it's the same way. That's why I spend so much time with clients, like when I meet with them. And it's something I don't regret because I feel like I can understand them better. And then if they come back to me at some point for advice and say, should I get this? I remember.
Yeah.
Or I'll go back to my notes and say, I don't know if that's going to work, or I think that could work. Just wear it with a different necklace or different earrings or something like that. So I feel like it's important to spend the time the first time. And I think that's way. But as far as all the information.
But you don't find that like overwhelming to you?
No,
gather all that information.
I enjoy that part of it. And honestly, I have to say, I got my palette done a long time ago. So I was kind of doing this kind of in my mind for a long time. I did do friends' closets without formally giving them a palette, but I would go through their closets and tell them yes, yes, no, no, this maybe with something else. So I was kind of doing it informally for a really long time, and so when I started doing it, it was just a solidification.
You had your own palette to work with.
Right. What I needed to work on. I had kind of had categories that I needed to study. I needed to learn more about.
So cool.
Yeah. But it's really it's a privilege. I mean, it's a privilege for me that people kind of let me into their lives, right? For that short time, and just are willing to take that time with me, to do it.
Well, it's really was. I don't think, not to be dramatic, but I do feel like it was life changing. And I knew it would be. That's why I didn't want to just hire anyone. How is it possible to be to learn that much about somebody, and then it not be too much for you? Because you were talking about it being too much,
right?
To share.
Oh, to share with people.
To share like with people who they really are, and that is what you find the biggest challenge.
Right. Yes.
Which is fascinating.
I think the palettes are the easiest for people and the palette books are the easiest for people to accept. They could even say, oh, I'm looking for a pink dress. So they'll just pull out those fabrics, put them in their purse, whatever, pull out those samples and put them in their purse and, go shopping. Or I think that's the most practical and most tangible piece of it. And I think sometimes people find their way with a lot of people, people don't always give themselves credit for how much they already know about themselves coming into this. So when I did your palette, for example, you knew so much about yourself, but sometimes you forgot. Like you had some things that were just like right on target in every way. But that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
Too, before I got my palette done, where we sometimes lose touch, and maybe it's a good, right, back to that metaphor. But I think, no, I don't, for myself, like for me, it's like a beautiful thing and it's a creative thing. So I enjoy doing it. And I have to think more about like how much I share with people, just how much they can take in. Cause even if you're totally new to it, even just taking in the fact that, let's say you're a summer, or let's say you're a sunset summer, or like a dynamic winter, or whatever titles colorists give people, it's sometimes so much to absorb like that it's hard to absorb, like thinking about eras and art and jewelry and history. So I think, that's part of my learning process.
Yeah.
Too. People have to also tell me what they're ready for.
Yeah. I guess it is overwhelming to become more self-aware. Maybe we can talk about that. Like the self-awareness piece of like getting your palette done and the value that brings to you and the world.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's true. I think any kind of self-awareness or self-examination is hard. I mean, but I think that's in the initial stages of discovering your palette. And then once you have it, it becomes like I think we talked about this before, like a stage scenery or like a setting for a ring. It's not the most important thing, but it's kind of in the backdrop there, and it's in the back of your mind. You know that it's there, and you don't even, at some point, you don't even need to look at your palette or at your notes to know like what you should try next. So of course, I think the initial part of self-awareness is hard. And then
what's so hard about it? Like just from the perspective of what is, I know it's hard. I'm just curious, like from like the palette side.
Yes.
And from you seeing clients and how difficult it is to absorb, like what is the challenge of absorbing this kind of information?
Oh, this kind of information specifically. Yeah. I think the challenge is sometimes that we're all on social media and we're all been given sometimes a formula for what is in style. And I mean, maybe it's a gift of our generation, but I've noticed this because I follow a lot of trends, is that right now, especially during COVID, it's like it was the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, the aughts or whatever. So it's like 1 minute people are wearing these really ugly Crocs, and I use that term loosely because they will be beautiful for somebody.
Not for me.
Not for
whatever.
me either. But I'm just saying, like, people were wearing things that maybe seemed bizarre or unusual, and it's really a product of our time. So how do we integrate all of that? I think one of the hard things for people to do is that we want to stay on trend. Everybody does. We don't want to look like, we may want to nod towards like the 1800s or biblical times, or like, medieval times.
A British corset.
Exactly.
Maybe.
So you want like a little bit, but you don't want too much that looks like you literally like just got off a horse, in the forest.
Just walked out of the set.
Yes, exactly. Or what? Right. A Shakespeare play or something. So, yeah. So I think like we have to kind of balance that. And I think it's hard for people. Sometimes they want to go back. We all do this, right? We want to go back to what we're comfortable with. Yes. And what's comfortable for some people is either the trend. Comfortable for some people is what they wore when they were younger.
High school, I feel like, is a big one.
Yeah.
People are really attached to their high school.
Yes.
Like
their look.
The look of high school. And it's like, sweetheart,
right.
It's time.
I agree. So I think there are challenges to that too, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we can see people who are maybe in their early 30s who are dressing like they're 15.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like there's a dissonance there because the costume kind of shows what you're doing. If you're a professional woman, then your costume kind of goes along, or your dress, like you could be trendy, but you're not necessarily wearing the clothing that you wore when you were 15 on a day-to-day basis. So I mean, I think it's also part of it, right? Like growing up kind of thing.
And maybe being really like wishing that, like not owning their age. and like
Yes.
really being connected and nostalgic
Right.
to like high school days or whatever.
The other difficult thing I think is
Yeah.
like every decade we kind of transition into a new style
Yeah.
and so we keep some of the things because everything is like a slow growth process. So we keep some of the things that we wore in our 30s into our 40s and in our 40s into our 50s.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to go back too far because the things that even suit you, even if they were the right color or the right style when you were really young, don't look right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just give an example for myself. When I was growing up, there were Laura Ashley dresses. Shout out to anyone who grew up in the 80s. Laura Ashley dresses were very big. We kind of have a resurgence of that with the Batsheva dresses that are out there, but which are to me very much a throwback again.
How do you feel about wearing them?
They're not for me,
No.
but they
Okay.
could be for someone else. And of course, I would style it with something that kind of is more grounding so you don't look like Little House on the Prairie. And it was the same, the Laura Ashley dresses, people were wearing them with kind of funky shoes, with sneakers, similar to what people are doing now.
Right.
Oh, slightly different profile. But those things look really good when I was young. But, as we get older, we change. And maybe like a cute floral print that was fine when you were young looks too springy, if you're a summer.
Right. Or if you're a fall.
I'm a summer, but I'm close to fall.
Okay.
So kind of a hybrid season.
Right. Similar to me.
Yeah, similar to you. Yeah. So I take from both. But that's also, I agree with you. Like, so taking some trends, but kind of making it yours, but not wearing only the trend. Because I think some people, it depends on the person, like you said, either nostalgia or being very in tune to current trends. The only thing with dressing that way in general is if you're dressing for the trend, that means that you have to kind of redo your closet every season and every year. So the beauty of the palette is that hopefully you get a few classical pieces that, and I always say like the boots, the jacket, the bag, and then everything else you can kind of play with.
Mm-hmm. The boots, the jacket, the bag.
Yeah, or the boots.
All right.
The boots, the coat, and the bag.
Wait, what did I say? Okay, so invest in those.
Yes, invest in those. I mean, classical pieces, because who could go wrong with classical pieces? I mean, even if you look at any fashion magazines, any Instagram, Vogue, British Vogue, French Vogue, whatever you're looking at, classical pieces are always in style and they always come back. So if you're going to invest, that's the way to go. And to wear trendy, boots. You can get trendy.
Yeah.
But
also the trends are grounded in your personal style.
Right.
And I think that's also a hard thing for people to wrap their, because it's just either your style or your everyone else's style. And it's like, you could do both. Right.
You could do both. And you could wear something trendy. I mean, to me, the rule is like the 75-25 rule.
Okay.
Which is, it's kind of a rule that I made up, but I'm sure I got it from somewhere. But let's say you want to wear really trendy, like Doc Martens or like a really chunky boot, but you're like a really elegant winter or summer and you can't carry it off. Of course there are winters that can, so I don't want to make any generalizations, but let's say you're really delicate and whatever. So if you wear 75% of your outfit is kind of in your palette, and I use that term very widely, then you can wear the Doc Martens, and still be trendy, wear a pair that's maybe close to the colors on your palette, so it kind of blends in.
Right. Even like pink Doc Martens instead of black, or like
yeah,
or like a slate, or like a
olive, if you can find like an olive that's close to your colors, and then you can wear it with something. Wear it with like a wrap dress or something that that kind of elevates it a little bit, so it's not completely grunge.
Basically, you can wear whatever you want.
You
could,
just
need to be aware.
And need to be aware of the balance. So
what's 75 and what's 25?
So 75 is your palette and your style. Do you know what I mean? And 25 is whatever you want. So let's say, and I'll give an example. I'll give an example of myself because I'm kind of like, I have a dressier palette. Like if I wore a velvet jacket with a t-shirt and like maybe a short denim skirt in the right color, I would kind of have a nice like boots. So 75% of what I was wearing would be in my palette. And then I have this cool, funky, like graphic tee underneath the velvet jacket. And that would be the 25% that's off.
Right.
But I would still be able to carry the look because I'm wearing, let's say, boots and a velvet jacket. So I'm wearing something fun underneath.
Or even the colors of the graphic tee can be.
Right. It could be close, pink or peach or.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I'm just saying, like, it's just kind of, it's kind of, you know,
you can go to a country music festival.
I know.
Even if you're
Without
a
the
summer.
jeans.
Without the jeans, exactly.
Right.
Like it's possible.
It's possible. Yes. Yes, possible. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think everyone can dress down. You just have to find the right way to dress down.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that funny? Like some people have a hard time dressing up and some people have a hard time dressing down.
Right.
It's like.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's like we have to find the balance.
What do I wear to the gym? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Know?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I don't go to the gym, so it's fine. I don't have that problem.
Yoga at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what else you would like to share.
Right.
In the palette universe. Obviously, I think a lot of people, like, the first thing they want to ask is like, how do you make it practical? And how do you, and I think you have shared a lot of practical tips during this time. So thank you. I just feel like when people ask, like, they want the practical, that's just like the immediate question. And I do like how you balance both, like the aspirational and the practical. I think that's what makes your work so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, if there's anything else that you want to specifically.
I mean, I would just tell people that the palette makes your life easier and everyone does it in a different way. And there's no right way or wrong way. And of course, I'm happy to meet anyone that's listening to this podcast.
Shameless plug.
Yeah,
Please
exactly.
plug away.
Exactly.
We'll put all
Here
of your.
I am plugging away. And I just think that, you know, I feel like if you get it done the right way, then it's like it's a constant like work in progress. It's dynamic. You know, hopefully everyone, you know, who comes to me can be in touch with me and say, you know, I really just don't like this color on my palette. Maybe there's something else I could use alternatively, or maybe there's a few more shades that I can wear. And of course, it's always like a work in progress, right? Yeah. It's not like something that's static. Usually the parameters are kind of set by your base colors, by the colors that you have. And we didn't talk a lot about what each color represents, but we don't have to go there. But
I would love to.
You do want to go there?
I would love to go talk about what each color represents, or do we need like a full other episode for this?
I mean, we can do the brief. We could do the short version. Okay, the short version is that, you know, every person has lots of things that they bring to the world. So it's like how other people perceive them and what they look like. So their hair color, their eye color, their skin color, and their personality. So those things all together. Our personality is more vague maybe, but it's there and it really informs even what colors you could wear. And of course, your season also informs the colors that you could wear. So taking all those things into account, the palette is made up of variations of your hair color, variations of your eye color, variations of your skin tone, and your romantic color, which is like a heightened skin tone. And all of those together with your high contrast colors, like your high notes, which are very vibrant colors, all of those together create the whole palette. And there's different pieces. There's pastels, there's enlivened colors, but all together they kind of create just one picture.
Based on like all the different pieces of who you are.
Yes, like all the pieces.
And I did put it out there and asked on Instagram if anybody wanted to ask questions.
Oh, sure.
So one question that came up, which was interesting, was how do people's palettes change with age? You did like kind of
talk about that.
Mention it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if you want to if you have more to share on that.
I do. I don't necessarily think that the actual colors change unless like you're very suntanned or very pale in the winter, or you're not feeling well.
Or even like when people go gray.
Well, so interestingly, so summers and springs who go white, then they start to take on winter styling, but not completely.
Interesting.
So it's a blend. Autumns always keep their color. They never change their colors, even if their hair goes white. So it does kind of make sense because winter is kind of the most classic of all the seasons. So as people get older, if their hair turns white or they choose to wear a white wig, which is less usual. I don't see it as often, but I know some people do if they cover their hair.
By the way, I love that. Women who I've seen it like you don't see it a lot.
Yeah.
But women who match their like actual hair to their wigs, like that's so cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's really cool. You can get some beautiful silvers.
Yes.
It's amazing. But yeah, we don't see it a lot, but it is a beautiful thing. Yeah. And I think for sure, this is like just the way I perceive it, but it's not necessarily, I'm not saying that this is truth because this is art. So it's all based on, observation and perception. So in general, a summer would move more towards winter expression if her hair was white. That means she'd wear like brighter purples, brighter blues. And a spring also would move to more vibrant colors if their colors were softer, just because the silver hair creates contrast. And autumn kind of is separate in this case because it would be too much of a stretch for an autumn to change so much of who they are to dress like a winter versus a summer. You could become more classical and elegant, as you get older. But it's not always the case though, because it's not always by hair color. Like for example, as you get older, your face sometimes becomes more chiseled and more strong. Yes. So you might move from a summer. Let's say you're a summer on the border of autumn, you'll find yourself dressing more like autumn as you get older because you're more defined. You're more defined and more chiseled. So you're creating more of that kind of dynamic or, look or earthy, strong look. So
it gets more bold, maybe.
It gets more bold. And people do change like over time. So I think people know themselves so well, like just to be in tune with like, wow, like what I said before about the Laura Ashley kind of look. So that looked really good on me when I was 14, but it's not for me when I'm 30 or 40, So
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's a little bit ironic that like people, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Sheva Castell. She does colors in Florida.
Yeah.
She was talking about how she's seen women after they've been through something really difficult and worked through something, been through a really difficult life event or something. And then all of a sudden, like they're brighter and they can wear more colors. So that was like her perspective. And then it's interesting because you were saying that there's more definition and there's more boldness, more classiness. And
yes,
that's so like counterculture, which I love. Like I love I love
and
that
it's not
piece.
about changing who you are. To fit your palette, it's changing your palette to fit who you are.
Yes. And also the fact that older women have this certain, people think a certain way about women when they get older culturally. And that's just like not the fact.
No.
Because like, the cheekbones, do you see the cheekbones when you get older? Like
Exactly. And it's also about accepting, back to the acceptance piece, where you are in your life and who you are. And of course, what you mentioned before is, of course, it's true. Like if someone is also like going through stress or hasn't been healthy, then of course their skin is not going to be able to handle as much.
Yes.
And people have told me that when they've been through a hard time, they want to wear all their passive kind of neutral colors. For some people, it's their skin tones. For some people, it's their neutrals. But usually it's a specific reason that they're choosing a certain color or their greens. Greens are very much
grounding,
healing. And soft for the most part. Of course, there are some very bright greens, but most greens are kind of healing to look at. And you have some greens in your palette too, and greens in your house.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that those are all things that people say. And of course, it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think people tend to shy away from their really bright colors, like their really bright blues or bright reds, when they're feeling kind of subdued. They're just looking to get back their energy. And greens are a good way to kind of get back your energy. Skin tones. Some people are looking for purity, and those are the skin tones.
Right.
So if you're in a part of your life where you feel you really just need, and I'm using this term, but I like it. It's like purification, and you need to feel like cleansed. Then sometimes it's, if you have, those skin colors, whatever they are, maybe soft pinks or whites. And for some people, it's, it could be their pastels, but really, it's really, again, very personal how you choose to like work through different parts of your life or different stages or grief or anything like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find that I'm drawn to my skin tones when I'm feeling more myself.
Oh God, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because more of my darker colors, when I just kind of don't want to be seen as much.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Which is interesting.
To be kind of invisible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it just feels like such a beautiful invitation to just, well, number one, learn about yourself.
Yeah.
Learn about, who you are.
Yeah.
How you can like express yourself in the world, how you can assert yourself, I guess, in another way in the world. And then also be kind and gentle and curious and open-minded and open-hearted, like you said before.
Yes.
To the constant evolution.
Yes.
Of what's going on.
Right. And it's a dynamic, it's a very dynamic process. The whole palette process is very dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if I could just summarize it.
Please.
I think for me, and I thought about this when I was driving here. I mean, I know this takes it back to a very spiritual place, but I think it's important for us to hear is that if we can look at ourselves kindly, and that's how we, of course, how we dress and how we present ourselves to the world, we should look at ourselves not only in that way, but also like our inner selves. We should also look at ourselves and kind of try to understand ourselves and be kind of think about our strengths and how we could, build something from there.
Yeah.
And the palette's the same way. And then we should also be looking at other people. And I can't say this enough. I mean, one of the things that I feel so privileged to do this, why I feel so privileged to do this is because it gives me a chance to look at people with an open mind and an open heart. And I want to be able to do that day to day and not be judgmental in a negative way, but to create judgment based on what's good and what's beautiful about somebody, right? Because the palette is it is a process where you are saying this is yes, this is no. So you are making a judgment call. But I just think we should look kindly at ourselves and kindly at other people.
It's like Gevurah Sheba Chesed or whatever. Like this, right?
Or
Chesed Sheba Gevurah. It depends how you do it.
Right. Or Teferet Sheba Netzach.
Teferet Sheba Netzach.
Right? Teferet Sheba Netzach. That's what I was thinking.
Or I was born on Teferet Sheba Malchus.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Rosh Chodesh.
And that's so fitting for you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so fitting for you. And that could be like the next level of palettes. We start giving people their spheros.
That would be so great.
No,
I would love that.
I think that's a little bit. That would be a lot.
It's aspirational.
Yeah, it's very aspirational.
We love aspiration.
Right. We could do that.
That's actually my word of the year.
I love it.
Aspirational.
Right.
Aspiration.
Because it means you're always climbing higher.
Yeah. Looking, noticing. Do you feel like you're more open-minded and understanding with yourself when you're practicing it on other people? Like, does that helping you with that?
I don't know. I think what I said before, it's trying to judge without judgment. And that's like a very strange thing to say. But because I do take someone's personality into account and I try to understand there's a reason that they're saying what they're saying. There's a reason that they want to dress in that way. And what do I need to understand about them to help them come towards a place where they can see where they need to be with their palette in order to look the most beautiful, stunning, radiant, gorgeous, whatever words you want to use, striking, woodsy, floral, I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, all those words, like fabulous. Like, what do they need to know about themselves? So I just think, like, for me, it's constantly, I'm trying to, and I know people talk about this a lot, so I don't want to get too esoteric, but it's really the idea of kind of,
we're not going to stop.
We won't stop.
Esotericism,
okay.
We're not stopping.
Okay, good. I'll keep going. So I think it's the idea, it goes back to the idea of being a teacher. So I just think that you kind of have to empty yourself in order to understand somebody else. So you really need to not be in a place, and this is something that I wish I had, but I'm trying. It's like you can't be in a place of ego if you're trying to help somebody else. So you have to use what you have and, be a teacher, but you first have to kind of, before you can give feedback, you really have to empty yourself and just kind of observe, listen before you could give anybody feedback. And I hope, what I really hope is that people can feel comfortable enough to tell me, I don't feel comfortable with that style that you gave me or sent me a picture of. Like, I really feel more comfortable with more classic designs or more whatever. I hope people can feel comfortable. I hope I create an atmosphere where people feel comfortable and say, you know what? This just isn't me. It's just not my lifestyle. It's not something I can wear. So then we can come to kind of like a middle ground.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of how I look at it.
That is honestly such a beautiful way to end off. I mean, we can go on forever.
We could go on forever.
Forever and ever
we'll
and
do
ever.
this again.
Exactly. We 100% will. But thank you so much for taking the time, for coming out here, for sharing your heart. This is like your passion, heart, life's work. Oh. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Nechama Yaffe. If this conversation resonated with you, please share with friends. What's the best way for people to contact you?
I think on Instagram.
Instagram? Yeah. Streams of Color. Mm-hmm. I'll tag it in the show notes. So check it out. And stay fabulous, people. Stay fabulous. Yes. Stay curious.
Yes. Stay aspirational.
Stay aspirational. And also come back because we'll have more stuff coming up soon.
Please.
Thank you so much, Nechama.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye.